evening and welcome to a very special interview show of The Pro. Today it's my pleasure to have Sri Shyam Pitroda sir on our show. Mr. Shyam Pitroda sir is an internationally respected telecom inventor, entrepreneur, development thinker, and policymaker who has spent 50 years in information and communication technology and related global and national developments. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out the time and a very warm welcome to The Pro.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So Shri Sam Pitroda sir is here with us to discuss his latest book, Redesigning the World, A Global Call to Action. It is a book that talks about redesigning the world on the foundations of sustainability, inclusion, equality, equity, and justice so that everyone on earth can enjoy peace and prosperity. The link of the book is attached in the description box below, so don't forget to check it out. So, sir, I would like to start by asking that do you think that in this bipolar world, it is possible to think about redesigning the world without looking at it from the point of liberal or conservative, left or right?
I think so. I think we have come to a point where we need to dream and dream big. And I'm basically coming from the viewpoint of hyperconnectivity. For the first time in the human history, we are all connected. What does this connectivity really mean? Can we go on using this connectivity to do the same things that we have been doing in the past with focus on geopolitical equation, bipolar world, conflicts, trade, economy, our ideas of democracy, authoritarian government, liberal, conservative, or we go beyond all that narrative and really look at hyperconnectivity to redesign the world, to take humanity to the next level. And that is the idea in the book. It's not about our understanding of all these different ideas today. It is more about focusing on two fundamental issues: planet and people. How do we really improve our planet using hyperconnectivity, which include climate control, pollution, water, forest, animals, rivers, ocean, and then simultaneously look at how do we improve the quality of life for everybody. Today, we live in a world which is basically unequal. There is huge divide between haves and have-nots. Very few people are very rich, and lots of people don't have anything. Even in democracy, we have divided people as opposed to connecting people. So the technology is about connecting, while the mindset is about dividing. So we need to build an inclusive world where each and every human being is treated with respect, dignity, and not with division. Today, we tend to divide people based on race, religion, color, caste. It really doesn't make sense in a hyper-connected world, because sometimes you may not even get to see your colleague, and you could be working with him or her on the internet for 10 years. What does it really mean to divide people? On the other end of the screen, when you are working with your colleague, could be a black person, could be a white person, could be female, or could be Dalit. Does it really matter? And I think the idea is to really be very creative, be very bold, and dream of a world which is possible with hyperconnectivity, and not worry about all of the hang-ups of the past.
Yeah. Okay, sir. So what are your, so you talked about sustainability in your book a lot. So, sir, where do you see this world as of now in terms of sustainable development? Do you believe that the SDGs set up by the United Nations are being followed properly by the major economies of the world?
I think we really need to understand the fact that the world was last designed after World War II, just about the time I was born. I was born in 1942. So that design was led by US with handful of countries to put new order in place after World War. That design gave birth to UN, World Bank, IMF, NATO, WTO, WHO, and many other institutions. That design also focused on measurements like GDP, GNP, per capita income, balance of payment, trade deficit. The global conversation today is fundamentally based on that design. So when all the global leaders meet, they talk about geopolitical equation, they talk about trade, they talk about military equipment. And I believe that design is basically obsolete. That design did serve us well. It created rule-based system. That's a great contribution from the US, and we should be thankful for that. It also avoided major World War III. It lifted millions out of poverty. It democratized technology. But at the same time, it has created inequality. It has not solved the problems of poverty, hunger, environmental blunders. And if you look at that design, you find that 7, according to me, key things happened after the design. 1, the entire world got decolonized. No one ever thought that the whole world will be decolonized in a short span of 25 years. No one ever thought that Soviet Union will fall apart. No one ever thought that the China will be able to rise the way China has come up in the last 30 years. Then technology got democratized. I always give this example that when I came to US in 1964, I had never used telephone in my life. I had never seen a television because technology was focused only for the rich and few in Western world. Now technology has been democratized. All 8 billion people in the world are basically connected. This technology democratization has also created inequality. And finally, 9/11 changed American mindset, and COVID-19 put entire world to halt. COVID-19 to me tells me that nothing in this world can be isolated. Everything is interconnected, interrelated, interwoven, interdependent. So it is wrong to assume that you can isolate a piece and say it is for me. And that ties into your idea of sustainability that we'll talk in a minute.
Yeah. Okay, sir.
COVID-19 also tells us that we need to rethink about global design. It is good time to take a pause and see what kind of a world we want to create going forward, as opposed to saying, when do we go back to normal? It is not about going back to what it was. It is about creating new normal. What is that new normal? And that's why I wrote this book during lockdown because of Corona crisis. I was at home for 18 months. I had to do something productive. And I felt this was the opportunity for me to put all my thoughts together look at my own journey, and look at in my own little way where we are in the world. Not that I'm an expert. I'm not a professor. I'm not a sort of, economist. But I've gone through a very interesting life in the last 80 years. I've been both sides of the world. I've been in India. I've been in the US. I've seen the real democracy, the real journey of technology. I worked with vacuum tubes. Transistor was born after I was born. And I have seen 4-bit microprocessor, 8-bit microprocessor, evolution of all the software languages and all. So this journey has given me unique perspective. It's very simple way of looking at things. And I'm convinced that unless and until we focus on sustainability and inclusion, we cannot take human civilization to the next level. Sustainability in terms of our planet, inclusion in terms of people. These are the two key drivers. How do you create sustainable systems? A lot of work has been done. We have huge amount of expertise globally, but these people are not given a chance. They don't get the right kind of hearing. Our political bosses don't pay attention to execution. They give a lot of lip service. We have been talking about global warming for 25 years. What have we really done? Not much. So I think sustainability is a necessity. It is not something fancy idea. Gandhiji talked about sustainable development in many different ways. Almost 100 years ago. Yeah. Gandhiji talked about inclusion in a very powerful way. Every one of his actions represented inclusive society, whether it was in terms of Hindu, Muslim or Harijans. And I think we have forgotten all that, and we have created a world which is predominantly for privileged people. And until that changes, we cannot take humanity to the next level. And that's what this book is about.
So what are your views on corporate sustainability, and how is it important in the current scenario? Because there have been a lot of talk on corporates turning into following sustainable models and all.
Sustainability means different things to different people. Okay. To me, sustainability has to be the core concept of everything we do. So first, we have to realize that there is some limit to growth. When you look at the amount of mineral and raw material we take from Earth every year, whether it is in the form of iron ore, lithium, copper, magnesium, whatever, we take 3 billion tons of material from Earth every year. 3 billion. How long we can go on doing this? Do we really need that much steel? Earth cannot ultimately support taking 3 billion tons every year of rich soil from Earth. It will have impact on our environment in some way. Maybe 50 years, maybe 100 years. So we must think of circular economy. We must think of conservation and not consumption. See, today, everything is based on the model of consumption, growth. Keep growing, keep consuming. That model has to change. We need to focus on conservation. We need to focus on regenerative economy. Many times I worry when I look at my tomato on my dining room table. I know that that tomato has traveled 1,400 miles before getting to my table. Does it really make sense? Why can't I eat local tomato? In the process of globalizing everything, we are killing local capabilities, resources, talent, soil, genetic pool, and environment. Nature has given us this unique diversity. Desert is unique, rainforests are unique, climate creates certain amount of original genetic pool. All of that has to be preserved. Because of our over focus on growth, we are killing plants, birds, bees, fish. Look at the ocean we have with mountain of plastic as big as state of Alaska. How did we get there? Because we started promoting bottled water. Bottled water idea is very new comparatively. By bottling water, what we have said is the water problem for the rich has been solved. For poor, water problem still remains. And this whole idea of creating bottled water with several billion plastic bottles a year is an environmental challenge. I also give another example where in India, whenever you go to visit somebody, they give you a glass full of water. Hardly anybody drinks it. Nobody says, do you want water? And if you want, I'll give you this much. And not whole glass. Can you imagine every day billions of glasses of water being wasted, drinking water in a country like India? Is it really necessary? What is the impact of that on environment? I think these are the kind of questions we have never asked before. So sustainability has to be everybody's concern. It is not the concern of the government only. It is not about forest. It is about water, birds, bees, clothing we wear. It's about travel we take, for granted. It's about everything. And we haven't really paid enough attention to sustainable ideas. A lot of oil companies talk about sustainability. There are all kinds of global conferences on sustainability. But the same group of people have 5 cars, 50 suits. Some people have 50 pairs of shoes. Do you really need that? Is that going to help sustainable world? So I think we need to really go down to simplicity. Because to me, simplicity and sustainability go hand in hand. We need simpler standard of living. Of course, there'll be difference in standard of living. I understand that. But we don't need 50,000 square feet home for 3 people because they can afford to have it. Knowing that others don't have anything. How can you enjoy that? Of course, you have a right to do whatever you want to do. But you got to decide what is that you want to do. Of course, you can afford to go buy, 50 cars. But you got to be conscious saying, is that really necessary? And that's where sustainability comes in.
So what, according to you, are some of the future challenges that the world will have to go through in terms of the environment and healthcare? And how can we work towards overcoming those future challenges as you talk about environment degradation and all?
So let's go back to the design that I talked about earlier. The design that was created during World War II, which gave birth to UN and all that, was based on 5 fundamental ideas: democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. Then world was divided into Soviet Union camp and American camp. It was a bipolar world. Soviet Union had exactly opposite ideas to the US. Democracy was more like authoritarian government in Soviet Union. Human rights were not much valued. Capitalism was controlled. As opposed to capitalism, there was a control of the state. Consumption was not encouraged, but the military was a common thread. When I look at the world today, I find that because of hyperconnectivity, everything is changing. Education, health, transport, commerce, trade, governance. Everything around us is changing. And we need to create a new model. So when I wrote this book about Redesign the World, I did a lot of research, a lot of reading, a lot of learning. And in my own way, I felt that we need to take next step, which is based on what we have accomplished. Not reject everything we have done. We have done a lot of good stuff too. So how do we take democracy to next level so that we create inclusive democracy? Today, all democracies are not inclusive. India is not inclusive. US is not inclusive. Whether it is Black Lives Matters or Dalits and minorities in India, we need to create inclusive democracy. But for that, we need to strengthen democracy. We need to build our institutions. We need to provide freedom and autonomy. We need to have justice. We need to allow civil society to flourish. And we need scientific temper. If we build right democracy, then we can build inclusive society. Second, human rights are not good enough. We need to create focus on human needs. Today, we live in an economy of surplus and not economy of scarcity. We can produce anything. We need to decide what is that we want to produce. Unfortunately, we wind up producing for people who can afford to buy and not for people who need it. So we need to create systems where poor people have purchasing power in their hand to be able to buy things. Whether it requires minimum guarantee income or some other work program, but you got to give them money to be able to buy things. And you have to guarantee that we can eliminate hunger in the world. Today, we spend $2 trillion a year on defense, when we know that it requires only $200 billion to eliminate hunger every year. 1/10. I don't know why we don't focus on eliminating hunger. I was in Silicon Valley last month, and this is one of the richest cities of the world, San Francisco, with large number of billionaires coming out of all these great software companies. And you see more and more people homeless, sleeping on the street. Does it really make sense? America, being the richest country in the world, has largest number of people in prison. Unfortunately, in the city of Chicago, where I have lived for 57 years, 500 to 700 young Black children die every year because of gun violence. Why? What's going on? Why can't we fix that? because we are not focused on inclusive world. We are not focused on basic human needs. Third, capitalism is not good enough. It has done well, but it has done very well for very few. We need new economy. We need economy that distributes wealth more equitably. We need to shift systematically wealth from urban to rural areas. How do we do that? There are ways to do it if we think about it and decide to make substantial changes. Then consumption is not the answer. Conservation and sustainability is the answer. And finally, I hope, and this is asking too much, that as human civilization, we have gotten to a point we can sort our differences across the table and don't need nuclear arms to negotiate. Why are we spending $2 trillion a year on defense everywhere? Look at the amount of money we spend on Afghanistan war, Iraq war, Libya war. What's going on? Who are these people who are deciding on these wars and trying to kill innocent people all over the world? Can we all stand up and say, hey, enough is enough? We will not allow military buildup. But people go on building military infrastructure, whether it is China, US, Russia, India, you name it. Somebody will have to say, it is time to focus on non-violence. There is too much violence in this world unnecessarily. And violence begins at home. There is violence against women, against children, against minorities, against poor. And it goes on and on and on. If we build equipment to kill, we will kill. During Corona crisis, not a single world leader has said that I will reduce my budget by 10% for next 5 years to improve my health infrastructure. I will spend more money on saving people than on killing people. People don't do that. And these are world leaders. Can you believe that? And we all follow them and we all worship them. It is time for somebody to stand up and say, hey, enough is enough. And it is not about against anybody. It is not about criticizing America or criticizing China or criticizing India or criticizing Europe. No. It's for the planet and for the people. Can we rise to a level where we think big and look at larger challenges in the world? I think that's what this book is about. Not that this book is going to solve all the problems of the world. Not that I have all the solutions. All I'm saying is, after Corona crisis, let us come together and see what kind of a world we want to build. When G7 people meet or G20 people meet leaders, what do they talk about? They talk about what is good for their country. They talk about trade. They talk about defense equipment they want to sell. They don't say, wait a minute. This is not a platform to talk about my country. This is a platform to talk about the world. In the process, if I have to give something, we will give something. This is the platform to talk about only two things: planet and people. It is not a platform for marketing my defense equipment, for worrying about my trade, for worrying about only my economy. I don't understand why people don't see it this way. It is so simple. And that's what I want to do. I want to create that new conversation. I want young people like you in the world to take my message to a larger group of people. You know, if I was today a multi-billionaire, people will pay attention. But people don't pay attention to ordinary voices. And I'm one of those ordinary voices from the ground and not from the top. And it's going to be difficult to take this message across. And I need all the help I can get. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So how big of a role, you talked about privatization, you talked about capitalism. So how big of a role does the private sector have to play in redesigning the world? And how can the balance between chronic capitalism and development will be created?
I think private sector has a huge role to play because private sector creates jobs. Private sector creates opportunities. Private sector builds things for people. But the question is, private sector will also have to realize that you cannot just focus on profit. It is not about financial gains. Look, America decided to move a lot of jobs to China, mainly because, one, they didn't want to deal with labor, as one of my friends said, and two, they thought they could do it cheaper. In the process, local people lost livelihood. And you have created a monster where entire world's production went to China because of their system, where they could get 50,000 people from village to live in bunker and work hard. So optimizing for profit cannot be the single objective for private sector. Private sector has to optimize quality of life for their community. And that's where sustainability comes in. Private sector has to really think about local jobs. Maybe reduce profit a little bit. But if there is local prosperity, they'll be able to buy your product. What good is your product if there is nobody to buy? So you optimize your profit, but in the process, you have taken livelihood from millions and millions in your neighborhood. So private sector will have to decide to protect environment, to make sure they don't pollute river. Look at Ganga. We've been talking about cleaning Ganga for 40 years. Why haven't we been able to do it? Because private sector has not taken it seriously. Rivers get polluted because you dump your industrial waste in the river. That's not the only thing you do, but that's one of the reasons rivers get polluted. So private sector has to play a very important role in making sure that the community benefits, environment benefit, localization is encouraged, local production, local capabilities are used effectively, and local ecosystem is preserved. You take, for example, the soil. I know that bajra in certain part of Saurashtra, Gujarat, tastes very different. Mainly because of the soil and genetic pool. Now you take a lot of these foreign fertilizers and destroy that soil just because the production is going to be a little higher. In the process, you are destroying local genetic pool. So these are all the things private sector will have to look at carefully.
Okay, sir. I would like to conclude by asking, is there anything else you want to talk about your book in specific?
No, I think, one, I want young people like you to look at the book, think about it, because your future is at stake. Some of you probably would live to be 150 years. Because by the time you get into trouble, technology would make sure that, like auto parts, all your body parts would be replaceable. And they won't let you die. So you have a long way to go. And it is your world that you need to redesign. I want young people like you to raise your voices. Promote this idea of 5 new pillars of the redesign: inclusion, human needs, sustainability and conservation, new economy, and non-violence. I want enough of you to have debate, discussions, dialogues on social media on these things, because the pressure has to come from bottom up and not top down. Social media is very effective, but it is being used for wrong stuff today. It is being used to spread lies, look at fancy videos, songs, and not really to promote big ideas like sustainability, inclusion. I hope you young people can use that social media for larger cause. My world is over. I'm 80-year-old. It is your world that we need to worry about. I tell my grandchildren that my grandfather gave me a world that was simple, poor, and clean. Unfortunately, I am leaving behind for my grandchildren a world that is very complex, rich, but polluted. Go fix it. That's the challenge. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for taking out the time. It was indeed an honor speaking to you. Viewers, do check out the link in the description box below to order your copies. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.